Hey guys, this is Chris from Ex Machina, and this is being recorded on December 30th. It'll probably go up probably the beginning of New Year's Eve, December 31st of 2020. Yeah, 2020 was kind of a bad year for a lot of people. I mean, a few things have happened this year for me that were good. I mean, obviously I got married. The Ultra Modern 5 Kickstarter delivered, and so far it's gone off without a hitch. We launched Naramata, which finished just before Christmas, and this video here is going to go into details on what we have planned for 2021. Both what I hope to accomplish and what you'll be seeing on both the crowdfunding company, YouTube, and other channels that I contribute to. The first thing I wanted to mention is that is Naramata. Naramata did fund on December 24th. It didn't rock the world like Ultra Modern did, but it's still funded, and that's what's important. For a title like this, it's important to note that about 99% of all the stuff that I was going to do for it is done. I got the rules, established, coordinated the art, and so forth. And although there's still some testing to be done, so far it seems to be pretty solid towards its final print date. Now, we're going to be launching the Pledge Manager probably in a week or two, sometime after the sometime probably first week of New Year's. You know, the Kickstarter has to drop the money in. CrowdOx has to activate. We have to build the Pledge Manager. We'll launch it, and people will have the chance to finalize their order, put in their address, pay for shipping if they need to, and if you want to upgrade the order, you can. And additionally, new backers can come on and do a late pledge option if they want to invest in. Now, the way it's going to work is that the only pledge level for that's kind of critically important from a time standpoint is the tourist pledge. That one's going to be up for probably about a month, but then it's going to go off because we then have to get all that artwork done so we can move it, because we can't keep that pledge open. All the other pledges are just basically for games or for the retail pledge, so that's not going to be an issue. We'll probably leave that pledge going probably up until we ship the game off. Like Ultra Modern, when we closed it, we may not close off that one for some time. So that's, but like I said, outside of Nick's art demands, most of the work's done by two other people who are not related to the role-playing side of the game. And that's Jason Bowles, who's a 3D guy, and Noah Alderman, who does from game trays. One guy is going to be doing the punch board, the other guy's been doing the trays. That's the only other design aspect that's going to get done. We're working with 3 different Chinese companies to get a good price point for the production. And like I said, if the game was done, if we weren't doing the game trays and we didn't have the art for the tourists coming in, we could go to prototyping in a couple of weeks, because that's how far along we are. But we still have a few more illustrations to go, so that's the next process. So for those who back Naramata, the first step is going to be Pledge Manager, and then having the opportunity to upgrade and close your account. I know that we still have a few. We have as you've seen, the board lacks the bottle labels, so that has to happen. And then we have the punch boards and a few other things. As for this YouTube channel, like I said, this is not a money maker. I use it to communicate to people and to manifest some other aspects of my creative juices that can't be satisfied with a role-playing game, a novel, or a board game. One is that I have a channel called Gateway Gamers, which I was semi-regularly making board game content with another friend of mine, Dave Townsend. I'm going to slowly start bringing those videos over to this channel, because that channel, we're not producing enough content to really justify that channel. So I'm probably going to be moving those videos onto here. So you'll be seeing those videos up. Anything that's dated, like top games of 2019 or what have you, I won't transfer those over. But all the games that are effectively, you know, time agnostic, that'll probably be popping up. I will probably be moving my Dice Tower videos over at some point. I gave it a good year, but I think that the videos are not doing anything. They're not servicing any benefit to me being on the Dice Tower. So I will be uploading most of them, maybe not all of them, but most of those videos on here probably after the Gateway Gamer videos go over. That'll probably be the last thing I'll update. I have a few vlog videos I want to go into. One dealing with how I roleplay and how I run games, which is going to be something kind of unique. I've stated that I'm very much an old school gamer, so people are going to look at the way I game and go, why would anyone want to run a game that way? And I guess exactly right. But like I said, I've been doing it. I've been as a GM since 1989, 1990. I've been homebrewing games since that same about probably 1991. So I've been doing it for a while, and I'm set in my ways, and I want to give the opportunity to showcase that to people. And then that's the other project. There's a few more updates for Ultramodern, but not much. I still have a character sheet coming, but we're basically not. I'm gonna say we're done Ultramodern. I still love creating content for 5th edition, which is the reason why we're going into Affinity. So for those people who backed Ultramodern, the last stretch goal was something called Affinity, which was a 3-setting series that dealt with related themes and new mechanics. Now, this game series was supposed to originally 3 100-ish plus or minus 10 pages, probably plus 100-page supplements that gave you settings and gave you mechanical content. And those were retailing for about 9 Canadian or about 7 US per game, and there were 3 of them. And well, I was comparing this with Naramata, the fact that some people wonder, like, why is this company running another Kickstarter when this Kickstarter hasn't delivered yet? And I'm starting to understand that more and more, why they do it, because when a project goes to China, goes to printing, everyone's sitting around doing nothing. So when a project is done, its creation process, you've done your 3D renders, you've done your graphic design, you've done your playtesting, it's still 5 or 6 months where some people aren't doing anything. The writers especially, they're just sitting around going, well, what are we going to do now? Well, let's work on the next project. And some of these guys, they're still running 2 or 3 projects simultaneously, even though we haven't seen the Kickstarters for it. So for me, when I waited until I was completely done Amethyst before I launched Ultramodern, but that was also because I was writing it until the very last second. I was constantly writing content because with Amethyst, it hadn't been written. With Ultramodern, if we had funded the campaign just barely, 20,000 or so, there wouldn't have been additional content. And then the game would have hit production and people would have seen the final version. It wouldn't have been as big, but they would have gotten it sooner because most of the 6 or 7 months before we hit print was spent me creating the additional content, the new mecha construction system, the new magic system. It wasn't just about these bits and pieces. Adding the 2 new adventures, for example, that took time, and adding the new artwork for that one. So there was a lot of additional content. But once that finished, which was near the end of 2019, there was 4 or 5 months where I wasn't doing much. I was working with getting the artwork done, tweaking the systems, heading the errata, trying to fix things and getting the Chinese printers done. The exact same company who printed Ultramodern are going to be doing Affinity. So almost immediately, probably as early as February or March, I was already working on the Affinity books. And the Affinity books were already, one of them was already written from 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, maybe more, maybe 7 or 8. But only one of the 3 books had been written, which was called Paradise. And I looked at that and figured it was going to be about 100 pages. 50, 60 pages of story, 45 pages of tech and crunch. And when I finished that first book, it was about 160, 170 pages. I said, okay, that one's going to be a bit portly because I've always felt that Paradise was the bigger book because it had so much more fluff, much more setting content. So when I went to Conestoga, there were a couple things I wanted to play with. I had this desire to create a crafting system that was inspired by the engineering bays mechanic in Dead Space 3. I'm a big fan of Dead Space. Even the 3rd one, it has this fantastic crafting mechanic that I wanted to recreate in 5th edition. And as I was a big fan of games like Destiny, and especially, and this is a strange thing, playing Anthem, which I'm a big fan of, even though I haven't played it in about a year now, I liked bringing really cool powered armor, not the big mecha, but the powered armor, and bring more of those and playing with that mechanic and presenting more of those. And very quickly, Conestoga pushed past Paradise and got to about 205 pages. I said, okay, then when I get to Taurus, which is the 3rd book, I'll keep that one. If I can get that one to 180, 190 pages, then it'll kind of average itself out. So I started writing Taurus, and for that one, my big shtick is I wanted to play with a magic system that used a deck of cards, an actual real deck of cards that you would play a deck of cards. I'm ripped up this deck here, and you would use that deck in a meta fashion to cast your spells. I was really fascinated about trying to make that work. I think I did. And then I started adding to the setting. I like the idea of fields of train tracks and then everything being train-based, not being aircraft, and having enchanted weapons. And I got into a lot of the weird steampunk weapons, but I really started to latch on to all the really bizarre designs that came out of the 17th, 18th century, especially from the Old West, these weird guns. And I brought all of them to the point we ended up having 90 or so guns and getting enchantments for those guns. And before we knew it, Taurus was 210, 215 pages. So I was like, well, this sucks. At this point, this project is far beyond the original 100-page plan. I had set aside a budget, assuming 100 pages. I had set aside an assumed price point for 100 pages. And then I decided, well, I can't leave Paradise like this. So while I was designing Naramata, because I designed the rules for Naramata in summer, and I've been testing them while getting artwork. But to be honest, I had still a lot of free time because I don't have a day job. So I spent a large chunk of the last few months adding more content to both those games, to all three games. And I just recently added a whole bunch of new magic items, and I decided to expand one aspect of Paradise dealing with golems, which I want to play with as well. And now suddenly it's to 210 pages. So now instead of being 3 100-page books, it's 3 200-page books. And that's not including the vast majority of the artwork, which means these are probably going to be 230 pages to 240 pages times 3. And having the mediocre $1,000 art budget that I had put aside for them just doesn't do it justice. So some people already know this. I've been talking to a lot of my backers and a lot of people who I discuss, fans who follow me, know that I'm pushing Affinity to go to be my next Kickstarter. I was planning on having it be Amethyst, but I'm going to push Affinity for my next Kickstarter. So for those people that had backed the three books back then, you're still going to get that game as originally promised. There's going to be 2 versions of Affinity. There's going to be a black and white version and a color version. The color version will be available as a print option, and the black and white version will be available as a print on demand option through Drive-Thru RPG. And then of course we'll have PDFs of both the black and white and color versions. When it comes to the mechanics, the games will have identical content. I'm going to make sure that they both basically have the same content, but the layout and the illustrations in the color version will be in color, black and white will be in black and white, and I cannot say for certain that there won't be more illustration in the color version. That's entirely possible. And there may be some layout changes that may alter the page count, but mechanically they should be the same. So anybody that bought the original Affinity from 2019, you're still getting that. And if you don't want to back the Affinity Kickstarter, which will launch I'm guessing sometime probably early March. If you don't worry. You're still getting it. You've paid for the Affinity books. You will still get this. Now, I'm going to say that now. I'm going to repeat it in my pledge update. I'm going to repeat it several times. If you backed Affinity in 2019 as part of Ultramodern, you do not need to back the campaign again. You are still going to get the black and white PDF for what you paid for. So those people who bought into that, which is about 260 people, if you want to still get that original black and white print-on-demand edition, you're going to get that. You don't need to back it. And I'm going to repeat that again. You don't need to back it. I'm going to say that as people are going to say, I'm going to send me emails going, why are you launching Affinity? Am I not getting it? And I'm like, can you please check the updates? Because I've said this. So I want to make sure everyone knows that if you've seen this video, I'm going to state it. I'm going to state it in my pledge that if you backed the Affinity game, or you paid for the Affinity game in 2019, which was the black and white version, even though that was for a 100-page version, and it's now 200 plus, you are still getting that full black and white 200-page book, whatever happens as a result. If the Kickstarter doesn't fund, the black and white version is still going to come out. This Kickstarter is to fund additional artwork for that book, as well as to fund the color and the color print version. If the Kickstarter funds, there will be both a color and a black. If it doesn't fund, we'll still have the black. You will still get the black and white version when it gets released. Right? The pledge manner, the Kickstarter for Affinity is to hopefully increase the content, maybe even get up to 250 pages per. Fund the color artwork and the color version, as well as fund a 3-box slipcase limited edition, which would be part of the Kickstarter pledges. I've already talked with Togo, which is the Chinese company, in order to get our staggered release, so we can figure out what our pledge level so far, our stretch goals. So we'll start with low, and then the final stretch goals will heavily increase the page quality, and maybe even give people the option of buying a leather-bound and a clasp leather-bound version of these 3 books. So that's what the Kickstarter is for. Other stretch goals will be adding in more illustrations that will be both in the black and white and the color edition. And I've talked with Nick about creating these illustrations in an efficient manner, so he's not designing the 2 illustrations at the same time. So the way the breakdown is going to be, if you wanted the black and white and you don't want to back the campaign, don't do anything. You're still going to get it. However, if you say, hey, I want the color version, there will be a pledge level for you to upgrade to the color version. This gives you the option of getting the PDFs or the print version. And now you're probably going to ask, will I have saved money by backing the campaign in 2019? And the answer is yes. The upgrade is slightly cheaper than if you were to get the color versions today. So if you backed Affinity back in 2019, you're saving some money. Not a lot. It's a few dollars, but it's not a lot. But there is a reward, a thank you, that if you want to upgrade to the color version, you pledge the upgrade level. Now, since it's only 260 people, I know who those people are. So if somebody backs that upgrade, I can check their account and say, you did not back the original campaign from 2019. If you back the upgrade and you did not buy the 2019 Ultra Modern, you will not get that content. And I'll be 100% straightforward. If you back the upgrade and you did not buy Affinity back in 2019, you are giving me your money for nothing, because you're not getting any product. There will be then a standalone black and white, standalone color, print, and PDF for all those people. So there'll be quite a few pledge levels, and hopefully people won't be confused. There'll be a black and white, color, upgrade for color, and then the print and PDF. So there's a few, nothing crazy. We're not doing $1,000 backers, and we're not going to be doing the custom illustrations, just because we want the feel of Affinity to be very consistent. Now, when it comes to the mechanics and the setting, we've mentioned the setting before. The setting is very much there are 3 settings that are thematically tied. They have the same kind of proper names, the same kind of governance structure. Basically, what I'm saying, the fact that there's 12 empires or 12 kingdoms or 12 geodesic domes. There's these 3 different factions at work within the setting. One of them had been recently destroyed within the last 2 decades. So that's a common plot point from all of them. And the empire that was the faction that was destroyed is the same in every one of these. There's a common enemy that's rising up to threaten all 3 settings. But beyond that, beyond the fact that you'll see names pop up, and the story fiction, the fiction that runs through all 3 books, is a very unique aspect. I'm very proud of it because it feels like stories are blending into each other. So this is the other reason why someone's going to ask, can I just back Conestoga? Can I just back Paradise? And the answer is no. You could in 2019. You can't with this new campaign. I feel very strongly that this 3-book set can only really be enjoyed as a complete production. If you read one game and you read the story fiction, you will feel kind of confused because there are certain questions that only get answered in the other book. So it's as much as an art piece as anything else, because it's designed to be a very interesting enjoyment, very much a reading enjoyment, or as much as just something you play. I know a lot of people buy role-playing games that they never play because they enjoy their narrative value of the setting being presented. A lot of people do that. I have tons of role-playing games that I have never played, but I enjoy reading them. I know a lot of people who bought Amethyst and Ultra Modern, New Earth, Past to Apex, and said, I haven't played them, but I certainly enjoy reading them. And I wanted to make Affinity that enjoyment, to create an artistic work within tabletop role-playing, which some people have done, and I like doing that. I did that with Amethyst, and I want to do it with Affinity. Now, that is just about the setting. Mechanically, obviously, all the new content, all the stuff that's turned these games into 100 pages to 100 to 230 pages has all been because of the new mechanics. As stated, there's 2 new spellcasting systems over these 3 books. There is an entirely new construction system for constructing homemade weapons of varying levels. It's a huge section about crafting. It's like 60 pages. There are dozens of pages of new bizarre magic items. We have every single book has at least 3 to 4 new races, 2 new classes, a bunch of monsters, and a bunch of new tech stuff. I'm also going to be moving some content from Ultramodern so that if you get Affinity, it's not mandatory that you get Ultramodern 5. So anything that's required, mostly weapon rules, will get moved over. So this 2 new spellcasting classes can be used if you just want to take that spellcasting class and put it into your game. I think Ultramodern will make a lot more sense if you have Ultramodern, but I'm not going to make that mandatory for Affinity. In the same way that Apex and Neurospasta didn't necessarily have to have Ultramodern. You could play Apex with traditional D&D, play Neurospasta with traditional D&D without having to buy Ultramodern. So, yeah, some things are going to get carried over. And like I said, there's already things I'm working on. Paradise is 212 pages, and I already am working on something that's going to increase its page count, which means I'm probably going to be adding more content. So, like I said, at 215, I wouldn't be surprised if these got to 250 pages a pop, maybe even more once, depending on where we hit our stretch goals. So that's a lot of talk on Affinity, but I want to go over the high points one more time. This Kickstarter is to fund more illustrations and a color version of the game. If you bought it in 2019, you do not have to back it again unless you want to upgrade it to the color version. And there'll be a print version offered as well. Now, that does mean I'm going to be running 2 campaigns simultaneously, which I haven't done before. Some companies do that. Some people have issues with companies that do that. I'm starting to understand why they do it because, like I said, most of Naramata's work is being put in the hands of 2 guys, Jason Bowles and Noah Alderman, who have no connection to my role-playing side, Affinity and Ultramodern. Nick does do illustrations, but he's doing illustrations for both Affinity and this game. And by the time we launch the Kickstarter for Affinity, all the responsibilities for Naramata will be gone. At that point, it is just putting all our eggs in our basket for Naramata, going to print, going to typing, and once we go to China for prototyping, is nothing else we do. Like, we're just sitting on our leg, and I'm not going to wait for a game to arrive. I want to keep, and as I chorus, and now I'm going back and writing more content for Paradise while we're working on Naramata because I like working constantly. Half the time, like I said, people who know my home life know that for a vast majority of my evening, instead of a husband and wife sitting by the TV watching TV, my wife's watching TV, I am right behind her on this computer because my TV is over there. And so as she's watching TV and I'm watching TV, I'm also doing stuff on the internet. I can multitask, so I can write, especially if I'm doing layout. If I'm doing layout, I can do layout and editing at the exact same time I can watch TV. When I'm writing creatively, then I have to zone out. But I usually do that when she's not here. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's going to be planned. So hopefully the launch, I'm not going to write it in stone for a launch for Affinity. I do want to make sure that everything I need for Naramata is done and put aside before we head, and I want a good month or so of lead up. I don't want to feel like I'm rushing to reach a date, which is what a problem we had with Naramata. So I am hoping and planning for a late February, early March. If we have to push it, we will, but we have a long timetable. But I prefer to launch it in March so I can spend all of the year working on that project. And I'm hoping it will do well. If not, like I said, we're probably going to launch another Naramata probably maybe later in the end of the year, or most likely sometime in 2022. We'll see. But that's it, folks. I just want to tell you guys what's going to go on. Like I said, we have a bunch of stuff happening with Naramata. You'll see a bunch of updates with Affinity. That's going to ramp up a lot in next month. And you'll see a lot of new content popping up on this channel probably every few days, if not every few days of every week. You'll see new content, starting with Gateway Gamers, a few other vlogs, and eventually my Dice Tower reviews will be moved over. Okay, so anyway, guys, have a fantastic new year. Hope you had great holidays, and I will see you in 2021.